blocks away from the site. There is black smoke and is covering the air. You see people covering their mouths with some handkerchiefs and their coats, and basically, it's an unbelievable scene. Most of the people have gone. The police are really pushing people away. There were a lot of people as I was making my way down here, Aaron, people just staring, getting on the cell phone, crying, recounting stories where they sort of basically had seen what happened earlier today, trying to get in touch with loved ones, very concerned. And then, of course, some people watching the other tower come down earlier, and then a group of people then watching this other tower come down, a woman passing me covered in soot. Basically, the sky is just black. You can't even see down to lower Manhattan from the vantage point right now. The police have cleared off all these streets, pushing people away. Police telling us if you have to get out of here to get out of here, pushing people away in garages. It's an unbelievable scene, Aaron.
You can see in this shot, our viewers can, a helicopter shot coming across the harbor, the Statue of Liberty prominent in the foreground, and smoke and devastation and tragedy in the background. A tragedy that continues to unfold, and one that still has many, many unanswered questions. We have a report now that a car bomb has exploded at the State Department. We are working to confirm that as well. Howard Safir is a former New York City Police Commissioner, the top police job here in the city, and he joins us for a few moments. Mr. Safir, what do you see? Look at that. What do you see?
I see something that's unimaginable. I see what is a police commissioner's worst nightmare. This is a situation that obviously was well planned, well coordinated, and the loss of life that's taking place down there is just incredible, and is going to strain the emergency services of this city to the hilt.
Are you hearing any specific information? Are you hearing anything about the number of injuries, the number of fatalities, the number of people in that building, those buildings? Are you getting any of that information from?
Well, I know there are 50,000 people who work in the World Trade Center. I know that every ambulance and every fire company in the city has been called in and dispatched there. It's unimaginable, but the loss of life is going to be huge.
You're as familiar with the city's plan or plans for these kinds of incidents as anyone in the city. In all honesty, does the plan cover the scope of what appears to have happened here?
No, we have an Office of Emergency Management. The plans for responding to a disaster are probably as good as any in the world, but nobody ever would contemplate that we would lose the two World Trade Centers and in this manner.
Tell me what's happening there, would you guess, in the sense that what are police doing? What's the first thing that has to happen? Triage?
The first thing is triage. The first thing is to identify who can be treated, who cannot be treated, to get those ambulances to hospitals. Every hospital's emergency room is open and I'm sure working right now. And this is just a situation, it's like a war zone. And you have to logistically treat it like a war zone. You have to have your front lines, you have to have your support, and you have to have people who are constantly in there doing something. I was also fire commissioner before I was police commissioner, and it's no longer an issue, unfortunately, but a high-rise fire like that is almost impossible to fight.
At this point, would you say that every police officer, and there are what, 40,000?
There are 41,000
police officers in the city have been called in?
Oh, every one of them. I know every firefighter has been called in.
And how many firefighters?
There are 14,000 firefighters, and I'm sure we'll be getting help with equipment from our adjoining communities as well. I mean, this is a logistical exercise that makes the first attack on the World Trade Center, relatively small.
Because of its scope.
Because of its scope.
And its place in the building itself, that it was high up in the building. Does that complicate things?
It does. Once you get above the 10th floor in a fire, it's almost impossible to fight a high-rise fire above the 10th floor, except by sending firefighters up there and using hose stands. Then you run into water pressure problems. I was just thinking about this not long after the World Trade Center bombing. The engineer who designed the World Trade Center told me that the World Trade Center was designed to withstand a 707 direct impact. Well, obviously, that wasn't the case.
It seems not. We are getting reports, and we are getting lots of reports, and we want to be careful to tell you when we have confirmed them and not. But we have a report that a 747 is down in Pennsylvania, and that remains unconfirmed at this point, and so we will check on that. I want to get back to the former commissioner in a moment, but again, to briefly recap, you have buildings in Washington now evacuated, the White House, the Pentagon. We have a report that there has been a collapse at part of the Pentagon itself. There was an explosion. You can see the Pentagon on the right side of your screen, and that is a live picture as well. On the left side of your screen, you see the situation here in Lower Manhattan in New York, where both of the World Trade Center towers have collapsed. This morning, as people were coming to work, all airports in the country have been shut down. International flights that were heading this way are being diverted to Canada. The White House has been evacuated. The president was in Florida this morning, and he spoke briefly and said, in truth, the kinds of things, and about the only kinds of things you can say in moments like this, that the government will do everything it can to hunt down whoever is responsible. This is obviously an extraordinary crisis for the president, and the first crisis, major crisis like it, that he has had to face, compared to the plane that was the force down in China. That seems small right now compared to what's going on here in New York and in Washington, and the president is headed back on Air Force One from Florida to the White House. The White House itself has been evacuated. We are trying now to figure out where the relevant players in Washington are, where the vice president is, the national security team, where they are meeting. We are working very hard right now to find out what both the FBI, what the CIA, what the Secret Service knows. It is chaotic now in two cities. You have major buildings that have been evacuated. It's very difficult, obviously, to get phone calls through as you look at the Pentagon, and I suspect we are also getting a report as you look at these pictures of the Pentagon, and I, in all honesty, suspect you see them a little more clearly than I do, but part of the building appears to me, as I look at it, to have collapsed. That's the Pentagon, and those pictures are live at 10:40 Eastern Time this morning. We have a report now of a fourth explosion at the Trade Center, and Brian Palmer, CNN correspondent, is as close as he can get to the area. Brian, what can you tell us?
We are, in fact, as close as we can get. I'm not going to give you an exact time frame, but several minutes ago we were standing in front of the United States courthouse when we saw the second World Trade Center disappear from the skyline. It collapsed before our eyes, again, in a plume of ash and debris. People rushed north. We had a New York City Police Department officer here with us who witnessed the first collapse, but he actually had to dash off to duty. We've been watching people crying. Some people had relatives in the buildings. They are not sure whether they are whether they've been evacuated, removed for the buildings, or not.
Was there, Brian, did it sound like there was an explosion before the second collapse, or was the noise the collapse itself?
Well, from our distance, I was not able to distinguish between an explosion and the collapse. We were several hundred yards away, but we clearly saw the building come down. I heard your report of a fourth explosion. I can't confirm that, but we heard some boom, and then the building fold in on itself.
We are told, Brian, hang on, we're told that the Secretary of Defense is being evacuated from the Pentagon. The Pentagon, a portion of the Pentagon has collapsed after, and I'm not precisely sure on this, and I want to tell you when I'm not precisely sure, but apparently a plane or helicopter hit part of the Pentagon itself. As you take a look at the pictures there, I must say every time we hear a plane coming up overhead, it gets a little nervous where we are. Whatever is happening and whoever is responsible, we have no way of knowing if it's played out yet or if it's just going on. So every time we hear a plane go by, we wonder what the situation is and where it is headed. That sound, we're told by a person here, they believe that is a fighter jet. Federal office buildings around the country, is that correct? All over the country have been closed, or just in Washington?
Well, we were not allowed into the federal courthouse here, where CNN maintains a workspace. The officers just said we're not allowing you in. I think that's a security precaution.
Got it. Stay with me a little bit. All federal office buildings now, all federal office buildings in Washington